Hello, this is a video that's slightly different to the usual ones. Usually I have like a bug lottery or feature lottery or branch videos, or if I've done something particular, I might kind of do a deep dive into it. I know when when a full year completes, I do like a year perspective. This is kind of a bit like a year perspective, but more to do with specifically how I plan to combat quite a common issue in these sort of games. If you've played Silent Hill, if you've played Resident Evil, you've played Dead Space, you're well aware of the concept of backtracking. Um, I think I think it's called like Metroidvania after like the Metroid games that I haven't really played, and Castlevania, which I haven't really played. The concept of backtracking, but you with the added bonus of, let's say there's a locked door in this particular house and you get a key further into the game, then you need to backtrack all the way to unlock that thing. So you see, it's like it's backtracking, but backtracking with a purpose. That is, I'm just going to change the mic a bit. That's the sort of concept I'm thinking of doing. If you played Exhumed as well, Exhumed is a brilliant example of effective Metroidvania-esque, like really hitting it great. I think even on like the first level, there's a bunch of secrets, and throughout all the levels, there's a bunch of secrets, and you don't even know these things are secrets until 5, 10, 15 levels into the game. You unlock a new weapon or a new ability, and then suddenly it's like you didn't even know this stuff existed. So really, really good implementation of Metroidvania. I'm hoping I'm aiming to create something a bit harnessing a bit of Silent Hill and Resident Evil and exhumed to a degree that form of Metroidvania. I won't go into too much detail in the acts to not spoil it, but the main concept is the prologue will be just the prologue. Just you get all these rooms. It's before anything bad happens, as you can imagine, with with being a prologue. Um, looks like a normal spaceship. Act one, you see here. I'll zoom in a little bit if you can read it. It backtracks like it's the same place. This section you're seeing left to right, it's the same, but there's going to be a change, and this is where I kind of refer to it as like a Silent Hill change. You know, when like the town bell rings, or not the town bell. It's like an air raid siren goes off, and then suddenly the level turns to like the hell version of it. Not something as like on the nose as that, but like a subtle transformation where even though you're looking at prologue to Act One, it's the same, but it's different, and some things will be different. There'll be different things to collect. There'll be different setups, different arrangement in the rooms. So that is how I want to not so it's not technically backtracking, is it? Because it's a new act. But that is how I plan to combat the first element of. Okay, I've already seen all this place in the prologue. I don't want to run through all these daft rooms again. So that's how almost it's going to be like a fresh coat of paint using the Silent Hill-esque transition, but a bit more subtle. Meanwhile, you'll see Act One extends to like the communication room, and then the hangar and the armory, the observation room, communication tower, all these sort of things. And then Act One and Act Two, which I'm gonna have to zoom out real far. Let's get it just right, just right. I've gone way too much. Here we go. Go out a bit more, a little bit more. There you go, left to right. You could see Act 2 and 3 share the same environment, with this section, observation room onwards, being the same in Act 1 as Act 2 and 3. The difference is you will notice that in purple, there's other rooms that open up. Purple means it's only open in like Act 3. So that's between Act 1, 2, and the first part of 3. That's how I plan to incorporate Metroidvania in a kind of like Resident Evil kind of straightforward, like, oh, this door's locked out, I can't get in here right now. This door's open from this door opens from the other side, sort of mindset. So that's how I plan to combat uh, the feeling of repetition and stop, like, just keep the pace going between Act 1, 2, and the first part of Act 3. Between Act 2 and the first part of Act 3, you can see it gets quite expansive. You will see purple is only opens up in Act 3. So that's normal, isn't it? It's just like, it's just another room that opens up, this door's locked. However, there's elements here like fire blockades, which they stop you going a certain way until you get rid of the fire. Quite straightforward. You get rid of the fire, it opens up other passageways. So you can see, can't get to the communication tower, so you have to go this way, and you can't go straight through the middle because there's fire, so you have to go up, but then there's a permanent blockade, so then you have to go down, and then eventually you find a way to put out the fire. I'm not going to spoil it. And then that unlocks this area here, but also unlocks this area here, and also unlocks this area here, which is critical to uh, Act 2. How to describe it? Resident Evil 2. You go in the police station. You see Marvin. The first time you see him, he's bit. If you go back to the police station, he's still there, but he's a zombie, and things are different. Something I don't want to say anymore, but that is what it is, because you see communication towers available in Act 1 and in Act 2 and 3. The mindset being that you backtrack, but things are different this time. Kind of like prologue to Act 1, but that's more like Silent Hill different. This one is more, you go somewhere, a disaster happens, you come back 3 days later to the same place. There's the aftermath, so it's more like the before and after of an aftermath rather than the Silent Hill transition between prologue and Act 1. So that is kind of Act. Well, I guess that's the Metroidvania-esque element between Act 1, Act 2, and the first part of Act 3 for this little section. There is, as you go further down, this is Act 2, Act 3 now. You will see purple. So purple again is only opens up in Act 3. There's elements where there's blockades, and for a period of time it appears like it's a permanent blockade, very much like Resident Evil 1. When you encounter your first zombie, let's say instead of going down there and you see Kenneth with the zombie, you go to the far end and it just says it's locked. I can't remember. I think it's locked with like the armor key or something. And you can go that way, but there's also, you get to a place where there's an elevator and the elevator doesn't work, and then the elevator works like further on in the game. You get activated, and then you try to go one way, the first way, so left to right, like the cursor's going. You go, there's nothing there. But then further on in the game, you manage to get through coming from the opposite direction. So the classic literal "it's locked from the other side" bit of text that used to pop everywhere in Resident Evil 1 and some of the others. That sort of aspect will help me combat, again, just repetition. You know, even if 95% of what people are running through in Act 2 and Act 3 is the same thing, that extra 5%, that extra hidden way, that extra, oh god, so this door opens to here. Oh, it all makes sense now. I wondered where that was. That extra 5% keeps it fresh. So that is how I plan to combat it in Act 2 and the first part of Act 3. Similar sort of process. You will see, like, here we go. If I just pick an example, let's say you've got rid of the fire, you're in the lift. Act 3, floor 3 is not accessible. Floor 2 and floor 1 is permanent blockade, you can't get through the other side. So you have to go to floor 4. You go all the way through here, across, you go down the stairs, you come out the other side of it to the medical bay, and you see the opposite side of where you couldn't get to. Uh, what's just popped to my mind is Resident Evil 2. You know, you have scenario A and scenario B, and you you start on the opposite sides of the big explosion, don't you? The opposite sides of the car. That is kind of what I'm hoping to aim for here. So you can see the opposite side, but you can't get to it um, here. And then, yeah, so you go to the medical bay. There's a lift in the medical bay. You can get activated, and that puts you into floor 3 from the opposite side, the accessible side. You get to the antagonist's room with the extra. This is very much like Resident Evil when it reaches the lab section, and you know, it all starts making sense. Very much Resident Evil 1, 2, and I guess to an extent 3, but 1 and 2 labs especially. Um, like original 1 and 2 labs, I will say. I guess remake labs and the original labs for 1 and the original Resident Evil 2 labs. That, and then that unlocks the one way, and then suddenly the lift is accessible. You can access floor 3, and then you can go through. So you've gone from ground floor, floor 4, or you've gone down here as well, but you go down here, you go up there, you go right, you deal with all that stuff, you come back, and then you go into float lift on like a secret, almost like a Resident Evil Code Veronica, like the oh the that lift, like the freight lift, going like the freight lift where there's the giant worm and the tyrant on like the island bit before you reach that I can't remember the names. The guy with the sniper rifle before you go a bit further and go into these little house mansion thing. Before that, there's a freight lift. So yeah, like the freight lift. So then you go to lift 3, that takes you to floor 3, and then you come out here, and then you get to floor 3. You can call a lift, and it finally opens up at floor 3, and then you can go to all these different floors, and you see it's just that sort of that. It is literally like an extra 5%. You look at all of Act 2 and the first part of Act 3, and then you look at that purple. It literally like and the fire blockade stuff to unlock other bits. Genuinely, it's like 5% unlocked. That extra 5% new when you're comfortable with the 95%, and that extra 5% alone is like enough to just put fresh coat of paint on it and make it a bit more exciting. And obviously, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be great without doing something clever, like you've unlocked these places and then other things start coming out a bit like Resident Evil 1. You When you first see the hunters, you don't see them at first, do you? You see the camera through their eyes and you see them running at you, and you have no idea what it is at that point because you've only fought zombies and dogs, and then suddenly you see this camera thing and it just cuts to it. Again, not something as copy and paste literal as that, but yeah, something's gonna happen. Sorry about that. I cut out for about 3 seconds because I've got a fancy SteelSeries headset with the interchangeable batteries, and yeah, didn't give me a heads up though, did it? It just cut off. So anyway, back. Yeah, that extra 5% gives it that fresh coat of paint. Honestly, makes a massive difference. I won't talk about Act 3 because Act 3, the second half of it is just It's very linear. It's like the end is coming, like almost Halo 1, the more level where you just got to escape. It's unbelievably linear. You just got to get out of there, sort of mindset. Not that same sort of emotional rush at that point. It'll be a different sort of finale, but that in terms of linearity. And that's all I really wanted to talk about. This I made. I will deep dive into it a little bit, not too much actually, but let me scroll out. This thing I made years ago. I think I made it finished it in like 2021. You like my little drawing? um, yeah. Bearing in mind I've got a very fast PC and it's still freaking out. It's not that much. I think it's like 40,000 words something, and then you see there's like little like score sheets, stats sheets at the bottom. Um, there we go, 42,000. After I did this, I then went crazy, crazy. I know it's a big thing, but come on, when you've got like 13700K and like a 4090, 32 gig of RAM, like 7200, you wouldn't think you'd struggle with that. But yeah, off the back of that, I did this. I visually created it. And you will start to see, if you've been watching my other videos, I've made it fit this feel now. I've pretty much done the prologue. In the current branch, I'm dealing with like an upscaling. I'm making everything 140 by 140 pixels. That's the max range, by the way. That's the square range, squared. That's not everything won't literally bust in at the seams 140 by 140 because then everything would just be a cube. But that's its max scope. It will be uniformed to the true size of the protagonist, which is also in 140 by 140 squared like scope, like square scope. Sorry, not squared. That would be a significantly bigger number. Um, yeah. So I've built this world. If when I do like a playthrough of it, you will see how everything fits. I've even got the stairs going upstairs, going down. Each one of these places is exactly where it needs to be. Each one of these rooms, or as Unreal calls them, like levels. Um, After I've done the 140 by 140 in the last couple of branches, I will see Prologue as done, and I will go to Act 1. It won't be polished, ready to show done. It will be done. Right, let's move on to Act 1. Let's get that smashed. Then, when there's tweaks, you tweak it all. Granted, that will be a case of where the protagonist bedroom in Act 1 and Prologue, or any of the rooms where they're repeated through the acts, yeah, if I change one part of the room, I may well need to change it in the other acts version if it's a fundamental change and it's not just like a Silent Hill adaptation change. If I change the functionality of one room, I'm gonna have to repeat it and save it. So there'll be a bit of back and forth there, but everything's iterative. So it just is what it is. I'm not afraid of hard work. Um, yeah, and yeah, so I did this. I made all this. To you, like, to me, I see it all, but to you, I guess you will just be seeing grey squares, won't you? But to me, like, I can't remember what happens in every single room, but about 80% of the rooms I've got like locked down in my head visually how I want it. It helps that I wrote it as well, so I'm not a big reader unless it's like technical learning to fix stuff. I don't read for the sake of reading, for example, but being able to write this, I feel like I know it on a greater level than I would do if I just thought it. And then visualizing it even just with like blocks has been helpful. So that's that. I don't want to go into too much of the detail of Act 3 because normally Act 3 is just a bit like Act 3 is a bit lackluster in films. You have a big reveal in Act 2 or something, don't you? Then Act 3 is just like It's almost like a spiking heart rate, and then it just tapers off to like resting. I want my Act 3 to still have a couple of heated moments. Not necessarily combat heated, but heated in terms of like, oh my god, it all makes sense. You know, when you step back and then you play it a second time and you're like, I understand now, sort of mindset. Uh, Dead Space was very, very, very good at that. On the second playthrough, things just really like the classic one and the remake, but it's particularly the original, the 2008 one. Stuff really makes sense second time round. So I want my second time round people playing it. Granted, we've talked about the prologue and Act 1, Silent Hill changes in Act 1 to Act 2 and first part of Act 3, Metroidvania, Exhumed, Resident Evil, fun stuff. But also, I want people to play it a second time and experience something a bit different. Again, 95% the same thing, 5% fresh coat of paint, just enough to make it brilliant. Like Resident Evil 1 Director's Cut with the arrange mode. It's everything's almost the same. It's like a 5% tweak, just items. Some items are rearranged, aren't they? But it made a big, big, big difference. And this is it. This is not. I don't want this to come off like I'm rambling. I want this to come across as you can see the passion and the understanding behind it, and from that, I've already put in what like nearly 3 years, like well over 3 years actually. June 21 started writing it, so I'm in it. I am not backing down. But yeah, so there'll be new game plus. I do want to create a little mercenaries mode. Not Resident Evil 4 onwards mercenaries. I'm talking Nemesis, original Nemesis mercenaries. Real cool where you can play as like the Umbrella. Um, what's it called? Like I can't remember what they're called. Carlos. What the unit's called? I mean, but Carlos, Nikolai, Mikhail. Is there like Robert or like Roberto in like the new one, like the black guy? Um, I don't know if he was in the first one, the original. But yeah, they've got like a Nemesis mode, haven't they? And not Nemesis, Mercenaries mode. And the name just does not do it justice for how amazing that hidden mode was. So I want to create something like that as well as a new game plus. Sounds like a lot of work. Is what it is. It's gonna get done. Like it's not a lot of work. I'm not touting for money, so I'm not doing a Peter Molyneux, bigging it up and then not delivering. But yeah, so that's new game. So I've talked about the prologue, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, first half, how that's all going to work with Metroidvania. Vania. I've talked about New Game Plus, like a mercenaries mode. I've never talked about those two before. It is in the documentation. And then I guess the last thing to talk about is the story demo and the action demo. So story. Oh, you remember when you used to get PlayStation 1 magazines and it had a demo disc and it'd be about 5 trailers and every now and then be like 1 or 2 demos and every now and then you get a really good demo. That was um I don't know if it was for PlayStation this one, but Resident Evil 2 demo. You certainly had it for PC and you got to a particular room where Leon in the original one gets the thing to upgrade his Matilda into like a burst Matilda in that room, and it freezes there, and then it just does like a frame with written text, still frame with written white text on it, and then that's the demo. You remember? Not the new demo where it's got time, the original demo of Resident Evil 2. It was definitely on the PC. I don't know if it was on the PlayStation 1, but that's kind of how I want my story demo to be. My action demo, it's not really an action game, and I kind of begrudge using the word action with like the issues that Resident Evil 5 was a wonderful game, but what it led to with Resident Evil 6 being disgusting, like just that's bad action. I want this to be action in the sense of maybe like the village in Resident Evil 4, but heavily cut down and much more emphasis on horror. Horror and as much as you can do in a little demo, but just atmospheric. Uh, Resident Evil Zero, when you come off the tram and you go to, I don't think it's the Spencer Mansion because that's the main mansion, isn't it? The secondary mansion that you only go into in Resident Evil Zero. You go into that through, is it like the basement or something? You get in. Yeah, that sort of thing where there's action there, but it's got a lot of atmosphere. It's like atmospheric action, not raw Sylvester Stallone two pistols action like Expendables. So that's what that relates to, and that's what that demo relates to. Story one will be done before that one. And that's pretty much all I have to say. I want it to be something that all that stuff I've just said. That's a few years' work. I want to get that out. I want to get it clean, polished, perfect, great little functionality. But I want it to be. I don't know if anyone ever says it, but like a cult classic. I would. It would be my dream for it to be a cult classic, and then off the back of that cult classic, create a director's cut, following the footsteps of the experts themselves. Really pay homage to it, and I'm not talking silly little nods. I'm talking this is really good. Signalis. I don't know if you've ever played Signalis. I did, and that was a brilliant homage to like. It was a bit like Overload or Overloaded One. That really like polarizing PS1 game mixed with Resident Evil One, Silent Hill One, and yeah, that I've only completed it twice. I really need to come back to it. That was beautiful. I got that day one. I want it to be as like beloved as that. And that's all I have to say. I'll upload this in a little bit. Thank you for your time. Yeah, that's it. Bye bye.